Hello there, this is Steve here in Sydney of the Lay Gnosis website, truebluehealer.com. Lay Gnosis is where you can get help from a second intelligence to assist you getting through the veritable avalanche of misinformation that engulfs you off your computer screen and off the television and the mainstream media. Trying to make sense of all that mis and disinformation is a task that you could really use any help you can get. The good news is that in just 20 minutes you'll get some physical evidence that something's changed, and you'll soon get evidence after that that you're getting some serious help. Okay, and it's all for free. Lay Gnosis, truebluehealer.com, just 20 minutes to find out whether I am pulling your leg or not. Now, what I want to talk about today here is stretching your paradigm a little bit so that it's a lot more elastic, and so that you don't invest so heavily in the very comfortable concepts around you that allow you to sit back and sort of, be laid back and enjoy yourself perhaps a little bit too much, so that you become complacent. What I'm suggesting is that you could become a little more skeptical. There's nothing wrong with a bit of natural skepticism, and I'm going to start with going back to the previous video where I was talking about Sigmund Freud, doing a hatchet job on him that many other people have done, and although he's a great historic figure, he basically got there by Zionist media publishing empires, and there was no substance to what he did. It basically was religious, you see. So now he had some disciples, and one of the most notable disciples was Karl Jung, a German fellow who invented the word synchronicity, which was a scientific way to try and make sense, or more sense, out of what seemed to be just pure coincidence. Is there anything to coincidence? That's what synchronicity was, an attempt to put a name on it and start people thinking about it. Well, today it's a household word which few people sort of worry too much about what the precise meaning of it is. It doesn't matter, but he sure got that word into your head, didn't he, 100 years later. Now, such was the affection between these two men that Karl Jung became the adopted son of Sigmund Freud. Did you know that? Now, Karl Jung was a psychoanalyst, and he agreed with Freud on lots of things, but did ultimately split off with differences in opinion about a variety of technical matters. But Karl Jung did go all over the world and led a wonderfully colourful and productive, adventurous life, collecting notes about indigenous peoples all over the world. Kalahari Bushmen, South American Indians, North American Indians, Africans, Kalahari people, that sort of thing, all over the place. And one thing he did was, he was a very eclectic person. He was always alert to psychoanalytical, psychological symbolism, you see. And to his utter surprise, he noticed that wherever he went all over the world, there were a set of symbols which kept cropping up in indigenous people's folklore, oral tradition, myth-making, that sort of thing. There are always these same strange-looking symbols which repeated with almost monotonous regularity in disparate cultures who never knew each other, yet they all had these things that happened in the past and were deeply sacred to them, deeply meaningful to them, and Karl Jung really couldn't explain them at all. So, being of a scientific bent, Karl Jung collected a lot of these symbols and wrote them down and pointed out the similarities between them and published the results of his studies, and he could really offer no reason why these strange symbols were so common amongst North American Plains Indians, Eskimos, people in the Middle East, China, Africa, etc. But he sure did notice it, you see. Anyway, he wrote the symbols down, and he was accused by all the left-wing people, the militant atheists, who ridiculed Sigmund Freud. But I'll just say here as an aside, the psychologists who do all this debunking are generally militant atheists. They are the least academically capable people at university, and most people at universities do psychology because it's all they can bloody well do. Their marks are not good enough to do law, engineering or medicine. Okay, so psychologists that do this debunking of these people often have an axe to grind themselves, and they tend to bring a lot of biases with them. Now, with much ado, Karl Jung was dismissed as well, just like Sigmund Freud was, for his unscientific, ridiculous connections and stuff like that. And, there's no connection between this and that, so it's faulty reasoning, faulty logic, ha ha ha. The skeptics have won again. We own and control logic, you see. I once saw an objection to Karl Jung's theory that there was a whole lot of these symbols that just lived in our collective unconscious. One objection was, well, where in hell is the collective unconscious? They ridiculed Jung for not ever saying where it was physically located in the brain. What organ of the brain is the collective unconscious? Well, the truth is, Jung didn't know either, but he just said, for want of a better place, I'll invent this concept of a collective unconscious, something that pervades all mankind, and it seems to be there. And I've documented all the symbols that crop up in all these ancient societies that have been untouched by the Western world, and being totally isolated, they have this long line of congruent symbols, matching symbols. So now, here's the funny part. All the intellectuals that debunked this part of Karl Jung are completely wrong, and it turns out Karl Jung is completely right. Because by accident, it's only by accident this happened. A couple of isolated researchers in the modern world began noticing that some of these ancient symbols in Karl Jung's books could be generated in a modern plasma lab. That's vast amounts of electricity occurring in giant vacuum tubes, huge radio valves. And in fact, it turns out that just about all of these ancient carvings and symbols and strange figures drawn on cave walls can be duplicated in plasma in large jars in plasma laboratories. This led a few isolated researchers who didn't even know each other to start questioning how could they all see these same electrical phenomena. Well, the answer came in the sky. Now here's where you have to stretch your paradigm a little bit. By listening to ancient peoples from around the world, because they did do writings, lots and lots of writings. There's been a lot more translation of them since Jung's time, thus explaining some of the symbols. It turns out the sky in ancient times, 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, was quite different to what we see today. This is what we've got to join in the video there, but the sky was quite different 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, and it was recorded quite differently, and we can get information about the ancient sky by looking at old rock carvings and ancient legends. The similar symbols keep cropping up everywhere you see. For example, this is about stretching your paradigm. Could you throw away, this is a big ask, could you throw away the idea of a quiescent solar system formed 4.5 million years ago, a flat disk of spinning planets, all in the same family, all behaving the same way, and according to Newton's laws have always been that way for 4.5 million years? Can you let go of that? It's a big ask, isn't it? But if you look at ancient legends, and we look at what they wrote on rocks and in manuscripts and in stories and in oral traditions, we've now had hundreds of years to study all these things, and we've got a surprise for you. That is basically that Earth and Mars used to orbit a brown dwarf star called Saturn, and that solar system collided with the other sun that we have today. The sun you see today is the second sun. We used to have two suns. There's much evidence of this written in ancient astronomical records. You will find that if you study ancient myths and legends and stuff, such as the beginning of the pharaohs, the Egyptian pharaohs, the dynasty there. It started off with two characters, male and female, called Osiris and Isis. Osiris was chopped into 1,000 fragments, and Isis, the wife, glued them back together again and recreated him or something. And that resulted in, that was the beginning of the Egyptian pharaonic dynasty. Pharaoh meaning star. Sun, actually. I got that right. The word phare is the French word for headlight. Does that give you a clue? So pharaohs came from the sun, they believe. And now, what happened to Saturn was, it was in our Earth sky. Once upon a time it was our lone sun, and for 7 days it glowed brighter than the other sun ever did, and which probably gave rise to the idea of 7 days of creation. And Saturn, the brown giant, exploded into 1,000 pieces, and also out of the explosion came the planet Venus, which is why Venus is so hot today and rotates the opposite way and is 800, 900 degrees, etc., because it's recently created planet spat out of the brown dwarf star Saturn. Okay, now when the two solar systems collided, there was all kinds of problems on Earth with stability. Worlds in Chaos, you might call it. That was the name of a book. Trying to describe such things. But there was a lot of settling down of the solar system, which was quite violent. A lot of people and animals on Earth died. And when the solar system finally settled down, the newly created solar system, which was two of them combined, there had been a lot of electrical discharges, which is part of the balancing of the energy required to make the solar system appear quiescent today. There's massive electrical discharges between the planets, and they were seen, and so you've got all these strange electrical phenomena that were seen in the sky thousands of years ago, lightning bolts literally between planets, turning up in plasma labs today. You see. Now, plasma is what you normally see in fluorescent tubes. You see it in those displays in shop windows, those things you can play around with, like a glass bowling ball with an electric source in the middle of it, and it spreads out to the edge of the glass container, that sort of thing. So we have a lot of things there to stretch your belief system, don't we? And it's highly likely that all these things happened. Now, the resistances you will feel to taking on board this new idea I'm putting to you, which you can get out of Electric Universe, thunderbolts.info. They send you stuff every week. I'll supply a couple of videos directly after this in the playlist, and one of them is going to be Wal Thornhill demolishing Albert Einstein for holding back science 100 years. He's one of the reasons you have difficulty getting your head around these strangely upsetting concepts that the solar system is not quiescent and trustworthy and always been the same. Isaac Newton is another one of the greats, lives in your head, occupies your head, tells you what to think. And then there's the Big Bang Theory, which is designed to keep it going because it's a whole industry in itself. It's our modern day creation mythology, utterly debunked many times over. But it's in your head, changing your thinking, changing your reaction to any new ideas and keeping us where we are. So there'll be a video following this with Wal Thornhill ridiculing Albert Einstein. It's worth listening to. And then another one about when Saturn ruled the sky. That's the second video. It's about when Saturn ruled the sky, and it was far bigger, brighter than our standard sun that you're accustomed to today. And it had different names at different times and different eras, different cultures. Saturn, Satan, associated with giant cataclysms. It itself blew up into 1,000 pieces, and rained all kinds of lightning and water and ice and rocks onto the earth, killing a lot of people, and likely caused some people to believe they were the chosen few, God's own, you see. So you can see where vengeful God ideas come out, and chosen people come out of ancient stories in the Old Testament, for example. So, and sacrifices to Satan are made today in the Bohemian Grove, aren't they? To the god Molech, that's another name for Saturn. So wonderful thing to watch, and please allow it to let you think and step outside of Einstein and Newton and those sorts of people, and think about the evidence that we have from ancient times and the evidence we have in modern plasma labs, revealing that the ancient sky was far different to what we see today.